All right. And we are live. What's up, folks? If you're tuning in live, thank you for being with us. If you're catching it later on, feel free to add some comments and remarks. Hopefully you joined us for our previous interviews with Michael and Lindsay and Carolyn and Luce and Carla. But today we got two other folks, two of my folks who became close friends during the pandemic. Nathan and Brad, I'll introduce them in a second and have them talk a little bit about themselves. But I'm glad that you're with us. Maybe I'll share a little bit how I came across these two guys. We connected during the pandemic, much like everybody else connected. And first we were talking a little bit about restorative practices and anti-racism, and then everything that's the work in schools and all this kind of stuff. But this is one of these connections that came only from the pandemic, right? Like we connected virtually because we didn't have the option of meeting up. In the sense, then during that time, we did some trainings together, and now we're reconnecting. So I want to welcome you, Nathan, and you, Brad, to some conversations today. So first, thanks for being a part of this today.
Of course, Joe. Yeah, it's always an honor.
Yeah, thanks for having us, and we'll have to get together sometime soon, Joe. Especially now that you have the new house going on. So we'll have to get together sometime soon.
Come on by the Pacific Northwest for sure. So let's see, where should we start? So first I'll say, if you don't know anything about Brad and Nathan, they are, critically acclaimed authors at this point of pretty well-known book, Hacking School Discipline, but also educators, trainers, speakers, school leaders, all kind of things, coaches, you name it. And it's been great to get to know you guys doing the work out in the Midwest. But let me pass it to you first to just answer this question of who are you? So I'll pass it to you. We'll go Nathan and then Brad. Tell me a little bit about yourself that I haven't said already that you want to kind of let folks know about. What are you currently doing? And more importantly, why?
Yeah.
How do you still do it?
Yeah. So my name is Nathan Maynard. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana. So I've been doing restorative practices now for about 15 years. So for a while, my first 8 years, I was in the juvenile justice field. So really got to use these practices with the population that really needed us the most, and to help them with that sense of belonging, what does it look like on the responsive side. Then I got into my educational career, started out as a college career readiness coordinator, assistant principal, and then I became a dean at a high school and helped open up that in downtown Indianapolis, which brought me and my family here. And been doing the work ever since then. Met Brad, co-authored the book Hacking School Discipline, developed a software that moves away from just extrinsic motivations and teachers looking through stuff to really help them with communication with the families and looking at like mistakes a little bit differently. So we look at discipline as sort of the root word of discipline, to learn, to teach. So all the stuff that we do now with our team, I'm the founder of the Restorative Group. So the Restorative Group is me and a lot of other brilliant educators and restorative practices practitioners. And we go to different districts and look at systems complexity and ways to bring this to fruition. And we use a lot of the research from Dr. Luke Roberts as part of our team, and just makes this, work best for the schools and the district we're at. We don't just have a training and say, hey, this is what our training is. We collaborate, we sort of build stuff up, and it's been, a fun journey for us.
And I've been an educator for a long time. I was and some people that write books, haven't been in the classroom or haven't been an administrator, haven't been in schools for a very long time, or maybe even never. So Nathan and I pride ourselves that we were working in a school together when we wrote this book, from our experiences and our actual stories. And I was a elementary teacher, a middle school teacher, a principal, a curriculum director. I never thought I'd be out here doing this work. I mean, I never anticipated that I would have written a book, or, I had no goals of going out and all over the country, working with school districts on this implementation of restorative practices and social emotional learning and all this great work. I co-founded Behavior Flip with Nathan. I co-authored Hacking School Discipline with Nathan. And I also run Teacher Goals, which is a pretty popular website and social media online. So, what I really like to do with that is to commiserate sometimes with teachers, to highlight what we're doing, to stay away from the toxic positivity of things, but also to realize that there is good going on right now. There's good going on in education. It's just that right now I feel like we're at odds in education. You know, you have a bunch of people who are talking about it in a negative way on one side. You have a bunch of people talking negatively about it on another side. So I'm really about bringing teachers together and supporting them through everything going on in the world.
Cool. Well, thank you for both telling folks a little bit about what you do. Now let's dive a little bit into the why, and maybe we'll start with you, Brad. So yes, but why do it, right? So yes, there's a lot of hard stuff going on. Why did you get into this work of education, and why are you still in it?
Well, I got into the educational field just because as a kid, I worked a lot with, I worked a lot with students as I was growing up as a teenager with my job. And I really liked, the age group. I really liked working with kids and getting to communicate with them. So as I became a teacher, it became way harder than I ever imagined. I never thought that it was going to be nearly as hard as it was, because how hard can it be to teach a kid how to add, subtract, write, right? I thought it was going to be not that hard, and I was going to get to enjoy my time with kids. But it's a whole lot of work. It's a whole lot of skills. It's a whole lot of effort needed. I truly enjoyed it throughout my entire career. And the reason why I really am big into restorative practices and social emotional learning is because I feel like it kind of takes a backseat to academic and rigor and standardized testing. But what I found was that a lot of our students simply don't come to school just because they're there to get their, academics and their core subjects in. A lot of students come to school because they need to eat, they need the connections, they have a whole lot of other things going on in their life. And I realized that, as a teacher, it's really hard to do all of these things at once, to do social emotional learning and teach and do that and do all these things. So I prided myself in my work with Nathan and how can we actually do these practices in a real way, in real time, with real kids.
Yeah. And
what do you want to add around why you're in this?
I mean, my biggest why is, I love kids. I love educators. I love doing this work. I got started early on in my career. I was 20 years old when I first got trained in restorative practices work. And, I had my major at the time was analytical chemistry, pre-med. That was my goal. I was going to, I wanted to be a doctor. That was sort of always my goal. And I started working part-time in this residential treatment care center. And I started seeing kids that were having similar experiences in their life that I had when I was younger. I was raised by my, grandfather, who's a first generation American, looking at the struggles that we went through and lower socioeconomic status, places and seeing the different stuff that I dealt with as a student that the teachers didn't know about me. They just saw the trouble that I was getting into. They saw the people that I was linking up with and doing this type of stuff with, and they didn't know there's a deeper side of that story. So when I started working part-time, I just fell in love. I was like, man, this is what I want to do. And that's why I did 8 years in the juvenile justice and worked in that residential treatment care center as a youth worker. I loved working with kids. I loved the passion that was part of it. And I loved how restorative practices isn't just about discipline or consequences or this, there's ways that we integrate that into it in a positive way, but it's all about this sense of belonging. And I didn't get a lot of that sense of belonging when I was younger based off the experience I was hearing, but my voice was never amplified. And I was pretty introverted when I was, younger as well. So I just was looking like I was a troubled kid and going through all these different situations. So I love to amplify voices. I love to dive deeper past behaviors and understand why something's happening. I love to see the connection between an educator and a student after something happens, when they go through conflict and they get back together. And it fills my cup up every single day. So, this is definitely my life's work and I'm always going to stay with it.
Perfect. So I think that takes us right into thinking about this summer's conference and the workshop that you two are going to be presenting on. So the workshop, let me read the title, make sure we get it. The workshop title is Addressing White Privilege as a Restorative Practitioner, right? And to set this up a little bit, one, this is a very common situation because we have lots of white educators, right? And maybe folks they're doing some form of discipline, whether that's punitive discipline or maybe some sort of restorative approach. However, white folks are going to bring their whiteness and their white identity to the work. So for me, I'm really interested and excited that you all are picking up this topic, thinking about it, and I'm curious of what the answer is, right? And what your thoughts are. I don't want you to share that today because you'll share that in a couple of weeks. But what are you excited about exploring as you think about this topic of white privilege and restorative
Yeah,
practice as a practitioner. And let's
for
go
sure.
first, Nathan, and then we'll go.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I'm really excited about this topic because I feel like restorative conversations, restorative dialogues back and forth between, people that have, situations go down. Sometimes we don't look at all the factors involved with something. And if we don't look at all the factors involved with it, sometimes what ends up happening is we may be causing harm with some of our restorative conversations. And now, my first, 12 years, I was a practitioner, and now I'm a trainer. Now I'm a coach. Now I'm a systems worker, and seeing the ways that educators utilize restorative practices sometimes in a way that may not be the best way, or they're not acknowledging all the factors involved with it, has really brought this to our forefront with our work to make sure that we're acknowledging this stuff. So I'm really excited to share the ways that we can make sure that we are being aware of everything that's sort of going on. I don't want to give too much away, like Joe was saying, but aware of sort of everything that's going on. And we're not taking advantage of what restorative practices can offer because we don't understand that whole sort of, circle and what's taking place. Even with that social discipline window, which is, very highlighted in this work. I hear a lot of people saying, we have to do something to someone to get it to be this with. And, Dr. Roberts's research, some of the stuff that we've collaborated on together, he's saying that this is causing more coercion and more harm than even real good in restorative work. So I'm nervous because, restorative is my life and I love this stuff, but I'm seeing some ways that this is creating some harm in our system. So I'm excited to sort of share what I've seen and ways to sort of address that.
Absolutely. And I agree with Nathan. It's just one of those things where you have to look at who you're talking to and who you're working with, and you have to be aware of who you are and what that brings to the table. And we're going to talk a lot more about this when we talk, but essentially you have to be aware of all the variables in conversations and, not force it and, not talk in a certain way and not come off in a certain way. You have to be much more aware of all of these, the privilege you have and how that will impact that conversation, because you don't want a kid just complying with you. You want to have a true conversation that changes things, and you want to work with that kid, not tell that kid what to do and expect them to do it. And a lot of the times we don't. A lot of times we just ask the questions. We ask the 5 questions or so, and we're going to get the answers no matter what. And we're not going to really hear the kid sometimes because we have a checklist of questions that we want to get through when it comes to restorative practices. And what do you do when you hear a response that doesn't really push them in a way that is forced and actually working together?
I appreciate that. And the reason I'm also so interested in this topic, because when we were in the 2020 land and 2021, the beginning of 2021 land, there was this time where it felt like the world was open. People were open-minded. White folks were open-minded to listening to folks of color. However, I've noticed a shift in that, right? So this idea of you as 2 white leaders and 2 white coaches, right? Thinking about coaching white educators is just profound, because we are actually in a moment now where white folks are now more conditioned to going back to listening to white folks.
Sure.
So for me, I'm selfishly interested in you doing this work because the opportunity that you have, because folks, they want to know and they don't know where to start. And maybe they'll come back and listen to brown folks again overall, but right now the ball's in your court. So it's a big opportunity, right? So I'm just excited about that.
Sure. And yeah, and I think there's a lot of room to, because when you're doing this work and you're there, amplifying voices go so far, but we've got to look in systems as a whole, because I truly believe like standpoint theory isn't just around feminism, but it's around like the way that we talk about race, the way that we embrace these different things. So sometimes Joe, some of the work that you've done with affinity groups and looking into that type of stuff, you can really create different change within those groups and get system to go into it. And I think on a more micro level system, we want to be looking in a similar way to push that needle with educators around this different work. So what we want to do is amplify the equity work through the strategies of restorative practices and through a white privilege, being acknowledging of that. So again, it's a safe way for people to acknowledge that privilege. It's not an attack on something, just so we can make progress around this, because we're all in this for the same reason. We want to help kids, we want to help educators, and make this a safe environment for everyone and increase that sense of belonging.
Cool. So let's flash back a little bit, right? So we're kind of coming out of a pandemic, kind of, right? And we spent good 2.5, 3 years in it. What I'm curious to hear from you too, as you have moved around and noticed and talked to different schools doing different things, what's something you've seen that was a good thing that came out of our response to pandemic education? Whether that's a shift you saw schools making, and something that felt like, yeah, that was actually a good shift that needed to happen. And why might we still need to keep that alive?
So there was a shift, and I'm not sure how strong it's going or as strong as it needs to be. There was a shift to the inequities caused by the pandemic, right? Inequities have been here since way before the pandemic ever existed, right? They've been around in America for hundreds of years, right? But with pandemic coming, we realized not everyone has access to a device. Not everyone has access to a safe space. Is the stuff we're given culturally relevant to all of our students? I feel like we started to spotlight a lot of the inequities in education for a while when the pandemic was going on. But as you mentioned a few minutes ago, Joe, I feel like the tide a little bit is turning when it comes to that, because now it's almost taboo to talk about inequities in school. So it's one of those things where you got to keep on talking about it. You got to keep on fighting for it, or it's just not going to happen. So that's one of the things where I liked what I was seeing for a while, but now it's getting to that point where it's getting a lot of resistance. So I would like it to continue on despite the resistance, but we're going to see how that all plays out on the national worldwide stage. But we've also seen, when it comes to education, we've seen a whole lot of, wow, we need to change this, and wow, we need to change that. We need to change everything about how education works. And that's one of the things where people are a lot more open, I think, than ever in how we do education, where we do education, what we talk about, how we teach it. So I think people are a lot more willing to go with an innovative approach and a more equitable approach than ever before in the past. And a lot of parents did see, oh, wow, it is really hard working with just my one kid at home, right? It is really hard to get them to do all the work. But at the same time, once the kids came back to school, then we forgot about that a little bit in some cases, when we started thinking about, well, the teacher should do this, the teacher should do that, the teacher should do this. When the reality is that we need a more community approach to education. We need everyone to support it. We need a lot more resources to do all the things that we're expected as educators, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. And I would just add to that, I think that what, a positive thing that's came out of the pandemic is, we need to treat our educators with the utmost respect and give them, the due diligence they deserve to feel regulated, supported, and through their journey. Our teachers are so precious. Our admin are so precious. Our student support staff are so precious. People are starting to see like all the stuff that they don't just do on a daily basis that they've been doing for years and years and years, but it's now to the forefront because we're starting to see it. We're starting to see with the teacher shortage. We're starting to see with people not wanting to come back into education. We're seeing how stressful it is sometimes to balance things. And teachers' plates are so full with all these different initiatives and these different programs. Even when it comes to restorative practices, there's a time and a place for it. You can't just push this in and say, hey, this is what I want everybody to do. You work with people. You do this as a community. You build this sort of stuff up. But I think the pandemic has really said, we need to take better care of our educators, and we need to continue to support them and build them up. And I think that's the biggest thing that we're seeing, because the student needs are there. The educator needs are now in our face, and we're seeing that. So now, everyone's making some changes. And I think, I hope the changes happen sooner than later, because we need our good educators out there to be with our students, and kids need it. I need it as a kid. I'm sure both of you two need it as a kid. We need good teachers to be around us. And there's so many awesome teachers out there that are not feeling burnt out. They don't know what to do. And I think the pandemic has said, hey, we got to take care of our educators.
Yeah. I think both great points. And the question is, how do we keep it alive, and how long can that shift stick around? Which I think takes us into this next question, is shift into the future. As you think about where education might be in 10 or 20 years, where it could be, where it needs to go, what's some of your predictions, or what's some of your hopes for where we might be 10, 20 years, right? And to put it in further context, when we're the older folks listening to younger folks
For sure.
on these podcasts and interviews and writing blogs, like, what do we hope them to be talking about? So it's not the same old stuff and we're listening to ourselves, new versions of ourselves saying the same thing. What's in the future?
Yeah. And I think that, looking at, even the future of work skill, one of the biggest future work skills in the next 10 years is empathy. We used to look at all these basic soft skills or hard skills as like how to be a good employee, how to do this sort of stuff. So I'm hoping in 10 to 20 years, empathy is the forefront of everything that we're doing. We're teaching that through our lessons. We're building that through our discipline processes. We're looking at school in a different way. And I think that we're starting to reimagine it now, but I'm hoping that it continues to grow. And I also think that amplifying student voice from not just like hearing them, but seeing that empowerment to make changes and to build this sort of stuff up. I've always told, teachers and educators when I do my training, like, I think I'm fun. I think I'm cool. I think I'm like hip. I think I can do this stuff, but like, I may not be to the kids. So like amplifying them in that learning process, having them help design what the schools look like, help design when we have problems taking place. I know some schools are doing it in bits and pieces around, but I'm hoping in 10, 20 years, that's the way that we model schools, teaching that number one workforce development skill of empathy, having student voice as the forefront to get this change going and to continue to build processes to make every single student feel like they belong. Because right now we're fighting this belonging battle, which we shouldn't be fighting. That should have been over years and years and years ago, but we're still fighting this battle. So again, I'm hoping in 10, 20 years, this is far so we can work on really what that needs to be, that empowerment of the student voice to support our educators and really building up that empathy throughout everything that we're doing.
Thanks, Brian. Where are we going in the future?
Well, with empathy, I've seen empathy at a low point, I think, in recent history when it comes to, who you're voting for and what laws you're going for, and do you want, certain things or not want certain things. So empathy will be a very important skill for the future, like Nathan said, because right now they're seeing the adults not have any empathy for anybody else, right? They're seeing narrow-mindedness. They're seeing, this is how I did it. This is how I was raised. This is what you should believe. So right now, what we're seeing, I think, is people not wanting to hear other people's perspectives and not wanting to see things from another person's lens, right? So I think that we need to be more empathetic, and we're trying to teach more social emotional. We're trying to teach more diverse perspectives, but it's getting a lot of resistance. And that's the problem right now that I'm seeing, is that we were moving forward for a long period of time, and now you can't even say social emotional learning and things like that in some places, in some districts. So when I'm looking into all of these things overall, what I'd like to see is that we don't put 35 kids in the classroom with one teacher. What I would like to see is that students are better able to learn at their own pace. What I would love to see is that we actually work on the soft skills, and we actually coach on the soft skills, and we develop the soft skills, and we develop empathy, we develop the future of work skills. But we can't forget that you do need some knowledge to be able to apply information. So I feel like, in education, we're very extreme into kids should just learn whatever they want, do whatever they want. And then there's the other people that are like, no, kids need to learn exactly what I say in this pace. So I think moving towards more of a hybrid where we do value education and we do value knowledge, but we focus more on the application side. Because think about the number of things you learned in school, Joe. How many things do you remember? Do you remember 300 pages of that chemistry book your junior year? Or do you remember certain bits and pieces from certain classes? So what I'd like to see is a reduction in academic standards and the ability to put more time into social emotional learning, but more time into actually application of skills. Because you can go a mile wide and an inch deep in education when it comes to everything that we're trying to do. And we come out of it wondering what the heck we learned that year, right? In some cases. So I'd like to see more time spent on the big concepts in education, the big concepts in the future of work.
And I mean, just to add on that too, I think standardized testing makes, the research and the work behind social emotional learning so much harder to achieve, because then we're trying to get to this achievement when there's opportunity gaps, there's achievement gaps, there's other things taking place that we're not addressing because we're trying to get this achievement mark that teachers can't keep up with. It's not fair. So, 10, 20 years, hopefully standardized testing's through that's a bad nightmare, in education.
Awesome. Yeah, I love the specifics, right, around testing and skills, right, and content.
Yeah.
And I hope to be there, right? I mean,
Sure.
I asked this question also to because in 20 years we will be 20 years further in,
Yep.
either somewhere else or listening to the same thing, right? So, I do think we have to dream so that somehow we're making some progress towards that. Cool. So I appreciate those answers. So let's shift. So like this work is also really difficult. Whether you are a practitioner, a leader, a coach, whatever, it's hard. We hit our low points, right? The pandemic was a perfect example of hitting a major low point and battling that. When you all are feeling discouraged, what's your go-to to recharge, to feed your soul? And if there's something that is feeding your soul currently, what is that? Whether that is, a song or an album that you're loving right now, a recent book that you're really digging into, or some sort of activity. What's feeding your soul, Nathan?
Yeah. So, I mean, what feeds my soul all the time is my 7-year-old, every single day that we spend together and we're doing different things. I mean, that fuels a lot of the work that I do, because every time I'm working with a student directly, I'm always thinking about like, this is someone's son or daughter that's going through this. So like, it just makes me picture my son Asher, and I'm like, man, that's why I do this work, even when it's tough, even when it's struggling. Like, this is someone's son or daughter. Let's learn something different. Let's build this sort of stuff up. So that's been huge. And I mean, listening to stuff, I mean, like, I think the Kendrick Lamar album, that when that came out, just the way that he highlighted stuff and so good of storytelling, and talked about even mental health and how like it's been so stigmatized in different communities not to get mental health supports, and how he put that into lyrics and doing this and highlighting that. I mean, that's definitely been the album I've been listening to recently that's been filling my cup.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, my kids will fill my cup and also drain my soul at the same time, simultaneously, depending on the moment or the minute, right? So, and I'm off with them during the summer right now. But when I have a hard day, or I have somebody cuss me out on social media, or tell me, or give me bad feedback, or my presentation didn't go as well as I expected, I always come back to family. I always realize that no matter how bad I did in my presentation, no matter how much something bombed, no matter how much somebody online doesn't like my opinion or my perspective on something like that, I have the support of my family, the love of my family. And at the end of the day, that's all that really, matters to me. But I am seeing these practices gain ground and gain and start to take hold and take place in these districts. I would say restorative practices, and a lot of the work that we do is almost stronger than ever. It's really, there's schools all the time wanting to get started and wanting to do this work. So I see that as a major progress. We finally realized that we can't actually keep on going the way we were going with punitive discipline, and we need to do something differently. We don't know how, we don't know when, we don't know how long it will take. But I believe for one of the first times in my career, a lot of schools, a lot of districts are moving towards this model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, we saw one that folks were hurting and in need of healing during the pandemic. And also this year, depending on who you talk to, I feel like everybody, I heard that our kids and our adults were struggling with everything we were struggling with, and it manifested itself in lots of ways, right? And either we punish or we connect and restore, right? So it is an opportunity if folks are interested in not just putting harm on harm, right?
Sure.
So yeah, I'm super excited about that. Now I want to give you both an opportunity to tell us what is on the horizon, what's coming up, what are you excited about as far as future work, future opportunities, writings, workshops, conferences, what have you. So first, just what's coming up from you, Nathan, and then what's coming up from you, Brad.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm obviously excited about, your conference, Joe. I've seen that, this conference that you've been doing for a couple of years, like it's making so many ripples into education. So to be a part of it, and I know we've been friends for years now through the pandemic and doing this stuff, but I mean, I'm so excited about your conference and to be a part of that and to highlight sort of, our journey and talk about some topics that like are a little bit deeper and go through. So that's definitely on my horizon that I'm excited about. I'm also excited about, we're going to be me and the restorative group. I'm going to have Dwayne Reed out there. I'm Liz Toronto out of Bakersfield, California. I'm Dr. Ben Lester out of, the Atlanta area. And we're going to be putting together a 2.5 day, in-person training in Orlando at SeaWorld. and talking about really what this like restorative stuff looks like, past just the foundation, past the theories, like what does this look like? You know, our last day, we're having a lot of district folks I've been working with for 3 to 5 years to show what this progress looks like. So we're going to have some panels, some discussions, and just really excited. Partnered up with AMLE for it. They're an amazing nonprofit that supports middle school level learners. But, you know, this is for, you know, every educator around. So just can't wait for that. We just talked to a group out of Ecuador this morning, and, you know, they're all coming out to Orlando. They're flying out, you know, everyone's got their visas coming out for the trip. So like, it's such a blessing to see this stuff come to fruition. This is our first, you know, in-person training that we've ever done before with the restorative group. So, you know, our whole team's just pumped up for it. We have a great day, you know, a couple days planned.
Beautiful, beautiful. Brad?
Well, I have, you know, I'm doing a lot of work with like Nathan is with restorative practices and working with schools. I'm also excited. You know, I've been working with Teacher Goals, which is what I'm the founder of, and we're going to start producing and publishing books. So I'm really excited about being able to amplify educators' voices and get people that are, you know, solid educators with great ideas and get their ideas out to the world. So I'm really excited to use my platform to be able to promote people and to get the good word out and really spread some positivity and effective strategies in the education world. So that's one thing that's been taking up a lot of my time. And I've been pretty quiet for a while because I'm just doing a lot of logistics things right now with it. But like Nathan, I'm looking forward to going out this summer and working with real educators in real schools on these restorative practices. And I'm excited about your conference, Joe. I mean, that's awesome. We're so glad to be part of it.
Cool. I appreciate you both being a part of it and bring you in to it this year. Let's shift to how folks can stay in contact with you. So Brad, so what are ways folks can follow what you're doing, and where can they see updates and new things?
Sure. You can follow me on social media. It's at Weinstein EDU, WEINSTEIN EDU. I'm on social media. I also, again, run Teacher Goals on social media. And if you want to reach out to me personally, my email is brad@teachergoals.com.
Nathan?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter as well. Nathan Maynard's my name. And then also, you know, we have a website called restorativegroup.org. You know, all the information's on there. We're about to launch a podcast, do a YouTube channel. Dwayne Reed's going to be running our TikTok account, so can't wait for that. He's such a great, you know, charismatic leader. So, you know, we got a lot of great things coming down the pipeline with the restorative group.
Awesome. So folks, definitely check out their work, their networks, and their offerings. Once again, they will be doing a workshop at our summer conference on Wednesday. And the topic is addressing white privilege as a restorative practitioner.
For sure.
So thanks so much. You two, good to connect with you. It's been some months since we last talked, but
been a
nice
while.
fun way to connect, and look forward to you all being here in a couple weeks.
Absolutely, Joe, man. I'm
Thanks so
just
much.
glad to be a part of this work, man. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, folks, take care.